Please state your name, any important degrees, and what you do here at Solstice.
My name is Brianna Riddleberger. I am the PA and co-owner of Solstice.
Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
I used to live in California, and now I live in Texas. I operate from both facilities. I have a special love for both sites. Personally, I'm a wife and a mom, love my kids, and I really love the outdoors. And I think what makes me so excited about doing what I do is seeing people just realize what they're capable of doing, and seeing that positive change, seeing that change of going from I can't to I can. And that just really makes the hard work worth it.
What is OCD and how is it different from anxiety?
OCD is sometimes can be seen as a form of a more intense version of anxiety, but it's more than just feeling nervous or on edge or having fearful thoughts. It's very specifically having intrusive, unwanted, disturbing thoughts. They can even be violent in nature. And then having a specific routine or compulsion or repetitive behavior to try and get that thought to go away or try to appease the anxiety that's happening. And so it's very much tied to having those fearful thoughts or intrusive thoughts, those negative thoughts, with that repetitive compulsion. But sometimes those compulsions can be sneaky. So a lot of people might think it's just anxiety, but if you take a deeper dive with someone who knows that clinical eye, they might be able to piece out that there's actually obsessions and compulsions happening, which completely changes how you approach your treatment.
What are compulsions that people don't usually recognize?
Some really popular ones that we see at Solstice are mental compulsions. So where someone is thinking through solutions, prevention strategies, or just some form of thought to feel comfort in some way when they get those intrusive thoughts. And so they get stuck in a mental loop. And it's subtle because you don't see the behavior. It's not like hand washing or cleaning. It's thinking over and over and over and being unable to let go of that thought because it feels incomplete if you don't do it, or it feels unsafe if you don't do it. And so a lot of people get trapped in that fog of being in the loops and don't realize it's actually OCD, and they think it's anxiety. So that's a really sneaky one we see a lot nowadays.
Why does reassurance never seem to help OCD for long?
So OCD is all about appeasing the intrusive fear. And so there's different ways that you can appease it. So one way is through the compulsion, which is some kind of repetitive behavior. Sometimes it's avoidance, meaning I won't even enter a trigger that might cause that fear. Both are problematic. But a third one is getting reassurance from someone else that maybe they're going to be okay. And that can become a repetitive thing, or it never really satisfies. So it's easy for loved ones to try to reassure when someone's struggling with OCD, to think it's going to be okay, this is how I can prove it to you. And they do it out of love and out of good intention, but it actually feeds the disease, because reassurance seeking behaviors reinforce this idea that the fear is legitimate, or that it's actually a problem, or that it's something that needs to be appeased. And the only way to really treat OCD is to starve that fear, or to not make it legitimate. Getting reassurance is opposite of that. It's saying, oh, this is a problem and I need someone to prove it to me. I need someone to prove it to me. The problem with OCD is it'll never be enough. No one can prove it to you. That intrusive fear is not logical. It doesn't make practical sense. And there's no explaining it away. The more you try to explain it away or reassure or try to appease, the worse the fear will get, the less it will mean something when someone tries to appease, and then the longer you get stuck in that cycle where you need more frequent reassurances, or it takes longer to reassure, and it takes up everyone's time more.
Why do compulsions make OCD worse over time? What's something people misunderstand about OCD?
Most people think of OCD as cleaning and being organized. That can certainly be a way it presents, but that's not all it is. OCD is very distressing. It's very intrusive. It is against your values. So you get fears that are really distressing. It's not just wanting things a certain way. It's not just preferring cleanliness. If that's all it is, that's something you want. You want cleanliness. OCD tells you it has to be this way, otherwise something is terribly wrong, and you must do something until we can fix it. So it's very demanding of your time, and it's distressing, and it does impair your functionality. It can affect you it does impair your functionality. It can cause you to isolate. It can cause you to have conflict in your relationships if you're not on the same page, and it can take up a lot of time. That's probably one of the biggest things I see is how much time it takes away from your ability to function in normal life.
Why is OCD so common currently?
You're having a major surge in OCD cases. There's a lot of speculation around this. Definitely after the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw more OCD arise out of just health consciousness, fear of illness, and that could feed some of those loops. Being isolated during the shutdown, being on our screens more, those things also can feed OCD type behavior. But now that we're kind of out of that season, we're seeing an influx even more so with the use of AI and having access to technology that's very quick. And AI is built and geared to be reassuring. So a lot of people will seek reassurance or seek answers through chatbots or any form of AI to make sure that they're getting the right answers or to get comfort in some way. But AI is designed not just to be reassuring, but to keep you coming back. And so you can get someone stuck on a loop. And so a lot of OCD patterns are related to needing to figure something out. Most of our patients are actually stuck using AI, and that's part of their loops. And building a healthier relationship with how do I use AI in a healthy way, healthier relationship with technology or screen time in general, is really critical for helping sustain progress.
Can you explain a little bit how AI is creating a world that rewards obsessive thinking?
So AI and technology as a whole, just being in this world of algorithm and of technology, it is all about having like endless information at your fingertips. That's a really dangerous reality for someone with OCD because that can cause anything to happen. And so you start getting this world of whatever can happen or anything is possible. If someone has an OCD tendency where it can get intrusive, it can get really destructive really quickly. So if the mindset is really focused on anything bad can happen, or if someone's really on social media a lot and seeing different opinions or different tragedies or repeating on like watching the news or whatever it is that's behind that screen, it can get intrusive. And then getting reassurance by continuing to engage with what's behind that screen, whether it's social media, whether it's asking AI questions or getting more info, more and more and more and more info, it's you get stuck in a compulsion. It's compulsive use on the technology. And that can get people stuck perceiving possible fears or perceiving things that might be wrong, and then stuck looking for more information or more answers or more reassurance through the means of technology.
With OCD and AI, are we confusing information access with emotional resolution?
Definitely. Yeah, it may start as just curiosity with information, but again, if you get stuck in the loops and just becoming more obsessed with getting more and more info, you can get into the pattern of the compulsory behavior of wanting a way to appease the fears that you have. So everyone does this to some degree, and where we turn to Google or we turn to some kind of search engine or an AI engine, and we want a quick answer to something that's bothering us. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but does that start repeating itself? Because then you start getting this new information, and then are you actually using that? Or is it the act of searching for it that is giving you that resolution? Because that's the difference between true curiosity and a compulsive behavior. Are you actually using that information and then tucking it away and then able to step away saying, I got what I needed and we're going to move on? Or is the dopamine rush of searching actually what's giving me relief? And then I get stuck doing more searching. Well, then that's never enough. I want a little bit more. And the information, the object that you're seeking, is it ever enough? That's a good way to assess it for yourself.
Are there certain OCD subtypes becoming more common in the digital AI age?
In the setting that we treat for OCD, we see lots of OCD traits coming out, including contamination OCD is always one of the common ones. But in the AI setting or AI context, we definitely see lots of what we call pure O, where it's obsessional, purely obsessional OCD, where it's intrusive thoughts and the loops are happening all in the mind, just mental compulsions. Those are sneaky. We see a lot of somatic OCD where someone may think they have something really life-threatening or some serious medical condition, and they're interpreting maybe normal sensations or minor sensations as a major disease, and they get stuck in a compulsion of looking up symptoms and obsessing over it and trying to determine, is this what I have? And that can even lead to spending a lot of money going to the ER or going to medical practitioners to really evaluate what kind of illness you might have. And just having almost too much information at hand kind of triggers that. And we see that with the age of AI. We also see general OCD patterns with people struggling with their mental health, where they turn to AI as like a therapist instead of going to someone in person. And so you see compulsive behavior of going to a chatbot or some kind of AI search engine instead of connecting with people. And so that can become a compulsive thing where, again, it's you're not really using the information or like the wisdom that AI may be trying to give. It's more about seeking the comfort of another person or another AI being. And so that becomes a repetitive behavior, and that actually reinforces isolation.
How are younger patients presenting differently than they did 5 to 10 years ago?
Younger population, so we're thinking like some of Gen Alpha, some Gen Z. There's a lot of emotional awareness, like high psychological knowledge, which is really cool. However, there is high anxiety. There's a lot of fear of rejection or perceived rejection, lots of fear of abandonment, or fear of not performing well. There's a lot of social anxiety and a lot of overthinking. Am I doing the right thing? And I see that a lot as a result of too much information access. Thinking when you almost know too much or hear about too many things, again, especially on our phone or at the edge of our fingertips, it's almost like there's too many ways that you can do things wrong. And so then people get in their head and they self-sabotage. So I see a lot of that. And then I do see a lot of OCD traits kind of pairing with that anxiety or that fear of rejection, where you see more compulsive behavior to maybe try and prevent doing the wrong thing. And so it's a high anxiety state. The cool thing is, because there is such high psychological knowledge and awareness in general in these generations, is that they redirect really well when they have the right tools. But that does require having someone really guide you and give you those tools in a way that meets your life and meets your symptomology. And that's where information becomes too overwhelming. You need someone who's able to kind of pare that down for you and kind of simplify that info and make it more practical.
What does recovery from OCD actually look like?
Recovery from OCD is kind of a spiral. It is highly stressful to start to challenge your OCD, to expose yourself to the triggers, and to resist or delay compulsions. It is very messy, and that can scare a lot of people or make them think that they're not doing the right thing in early treatment. It can really scare family members thinking that they're worsening their loved ones when they don't reassure or they don't give in to the compulsions. But it's very messy. It's very stressful. Anxiety does go up, or hopelessness can go up in the beginning, thinking this is never going to get better. This is too overwhelming for me. That's very normal. And it's essential, because in the early stages of OCD, you have to actually learn to be more okay with feeling anxious, and that it's not something we have to avoid, that it's a normal human emotion, normal human response. And it's about building a healthy relationship with our anxiety in order to overcome the compulsions at the end of the day.
Can OCD be treated without getting rid of the thoughts?
So OCD can't be focused on getting rid of the thoughts. OCD has to be focused on acknowledging the thoughts and developing more awareness of the thoughts before you can work on getting rid of them. Because that can accidentally, if you focus on that too much, you can accidentally introduce more compulsions, because that's the whole part of OCD, is you're trying to get rid of the thoughts. That's why the compulsions are tempting. So it's not about getting rid of the thoughts. It's more about learning how to be okay feeling uncomfortable. So the thoughts will be there for quite a while when you're in treatment for OCD. They will be there sometimes for many months. It's not about those going away. It's about acknowledging them and acknowledging the discomfort they create and letting that happen. It's also about realizing you have control over what you do and that you don't have to react to it. So that's where the delaying or resisting compulsions comes into play. And so it's giving your power back into, I can choose to respond to this, or I can choose to not. Or I can choose to just take a little bit longer before I react to this. That gives you some of that power back, which helps with the hopelessness or the helplessness that can come with it. And then the thoughts will float away more later. It's really like less of a focus. It's more about the awareness.
Why does uncertainty feel unbearable with OCD?
The uncertainty in OCD is not just unbearable, but it feels like an impending sense of doom. It feels like something horrible is going to happen. And that is why the compulsions feel so difficult to resist. Why that happens in individuals really does vary. Sometimes it's modeled by loved ones, and so it's a learned behavior. Sometimes it's a result of dealing with a lot of trauma or just difficult things throughout your life. And so that becomes the nervous system's way of creating a sense of safety, even though it's not logical and even though it's not actually true. It makes sense, to that distressed brain. Whatever the source of it is that nervous system's way of saying, hey, this is how I want to find comfort in some way. And so when you get stuck in that kind of neural pattern for long enough, anything outside of that feels unsafe. And so again, when you're wrestling with OCD or working through it, just realizing that you have to redefine safety. What feels safe isn't necessarily what is safe, or what seems safe or what seems unsafe may actually be helpful. It's just not comfortable. So redefining those terms is really critical.
What's the biggest mistake people make when trying to cope with OCD?
It's very easy to get stuck trying to rid the thoughts and to appease them, and that can't be the focus. Frequently, therapists will accidentally give their patients poor advice and then actually introduce more compulsions on accident. A really common example would be someone needing to reassure themselves that they actually turned off their oven or their stove. And some therapists will say, oh, just take a picture of it and then you'll be fine. But then that's another way to reassure yourself that you can't do that. You have to accept things may go wrong. You may not have done everything perfectly, and then that you'll find a way to be okay. So it's really easy to find different ways to appease it. Again, the focus has to be on distress tolerance. Like, how can I just survive this feeling that something might be wrong and learn how to be okay with that instead of trying to rush to fix it all the way.
How can family members support someone with OCD without feeding the cycle?
Family members are frequently unintentionally worsening the cycle by reinforcing, or giving too much reassurance, or following the compulsion demands. So it's very important to have healthy boundaries and to have limits on what you won't do. And to acknowledge that when you do that, you will be stressing your loved one out. That will feel difficult for them, but that's okay. That's actually very important in their process. So love and support for your loved one who's struggling does not always look like soothing, comforting love. Sometimes it's tough love where you're saying, I can't support this unhealthy behavior. So making sure you don't give into it and really having limits on how much you will reassure, and instead prompting them to use skills, prompting them to use tools, prompting them on what do you need to do to cope with this right now, or what skills have helped you with this in the past that you can use now, so that you're there, but you're hands off in the sense where you're not fixing it for them. And you're not reacting either. Like, you are in full acknowledgement that this is difficult and stressful and that we don't have to run away from that. Then when family members are reactive to discomfort, that's when problems happen.